All right, welcome everybody who is viewing online, everybody from our Anderson Creek location, everybody who has joined us on the online campus. Thank you so much, and of course you who are here. So good to see everybody. Again, this weekend was very exciting to have everybody back. It was very nice, a good kickoff. I hope everybody enjoyed and was able to remember and celebrate and mourn the sacrifices and the freedom made by so many people. So let's pray and we'll get started. Father, thank you for your goodness, your mercy, your love, your grace. Thank you for your presence. The Holy Spirit of the living God, we open our hearts and our minds to you. Ask you, speak to us. Give us ears to hear everything that you would say to us this evening in Jesus' name. Amen. It's so good to be back in our Going Deeper Practical Discipleship series. We cover a lot of things. Sometimes we actually go deeper into what we discussed over the past weekend, and sometimes we dig deeper into certain elements of the Word. Leave a little spontaneity and excitement with the whole thing. Today this evening, I want to go a little deeper in what we were talking about this weekend. So I'm going to do a little bit of a review, and then we're going to jump right into some new content. We're in a series called Me, Myself, and I, which is the idea of us traversing or making the move from a life of selfishness to a life of sacrifice, from selfishness to sacrificial is kind of the idea. And one of the premises is this, that your life was meant for more than you. God gave us something. Think of yourself and the life that God has given you as a seed of potential. In other words, God planted you in this earth according to His plans and according to His purposes. And as you engage with God in His destiny, His plans, and His purposes for your life, then all of a sudden His potential is released in the earth through us. So when I say that your life was meant for more than you, there's a certain element of faith that allows us to believe two things. One, that God has a plan. Vitally important for us to believe that He has a plan. And He has a plan that's based in love. Which means it's not about finding your purpose, but it's about fulfilling God's plan. Now, faith is what is, again, the very element that allows us to believe that you have a purpose. Now, and I know our culture is messed up and is deviated from God in a lot of ways, and it would try to convince a lot of people that you have no purpose and there is no plan and that there is random and observable chaos, but everything tells us to the contrary. You know, very often Christianity is kind of maligned and said that it is at odds with science. Well, the reality of it is, and I mentioned this a while back, there's two things that if you ignore will get you in trouble. One is the Word of God and the other is math, but God gave us both. See, the order of the universe can be absolutely dissected mathematically. It speaks of order. So when somebody says to you, oh, the universe itself is just complete chaos and it's random and it's disorder, they are being absolutely intellectually dishonest. They are not being true to science. When I say science, I mean the ability to observe and to reason and to assess, not a scientist's opinion. And very often there's a huge difference. Again, it is not about finding our purpose necessarily, even though you do have one, but it's about fulfilling God's plan, because in doing so, you will find and be able to embrace and functionally execute your purpose. There is no God, there is no purpose. The fear of God is the beginning of wisdom. The very beginning of understanding of yourself, your potential, your purpose, and your destiny begins with the acknowledgement of God. The Bible tells us very clearly, a fool is the one who has said in his heart that there is no God. The one who looks around and would be deluded into believing that everything in our lives is random. There's elements of sovereignty that we're going to get into a little while that are going to bring great peace for us when it comes to believing that God desires for us to have a plan, and a loving God designed it. So let's look at tonight. I want to take a few minutes to look at 5 obstacles to a life beyond me. Now, the idea this past weekend was that God has more. Do you remember the question that I asked this past weekend? Do you really believe that there is more to God and more to your relationship with God than you have been and are currently experiencing. If you do and you believe that there is more, that is going to be the motivation and the catalyst for you to actually seek for more. It was Columbus's idea that there was additional trade routes, that there was something out there that motivated him to do the things necessary to set the life in motion, to reach out and discover those things. Same thing. If you really believe, if you allow faith to ignite in you the reality that there is greater potential in God than what we have experienced and what we are currently experiencing in our relationship, that again becomes the faith that ignites us motivationally to do the things necessary to move beyond us to discover what He has for us. So I get tripped up by me. Maybe you get tripped up by you. There's a lot of selfish things. There's a lot of inherent problems that I have that come in great on my relationship with my wife, or come in great on my relationship with people, and ultimately separate or minimize my relationship with God. I'm not going to say invalidate, because I don't think we necessarily have the power to do that. He's a little bit bigger than that. But let's look at 5 obstacles to a life that allows me to live beyond me. Again, your life was created, or you were created for more than you. So number 1, I'm going to dig into some of these, and some of these I'm not going to dig so deep. But one of the greatest obstacles that I've seen and that I believe that we will encounter and ultimately have to address and deal with is something called selfish ambition. I want to say this so that everybody understands there's nothing wrong with being ambitious. A lot of us may be ambitious, but when your ambition is a selfish, self-centered, all-encompassing ambition, there becomes a huge problem. Let me show you what it says in James 3:14 through 16. And we're going to take this and dissect this and spend a few minutes here. But it says, but if you have bitter jealousy and selfish ambition in your heart. I said in your heart because this in your heart implies that it is one of the motivators. So in other words, your selfish ambition is something that is going to be a primary motivator to everything that you do. Every reason why you do it will proceed from selfish ambition. It says, if you have that, do not boast and be false to the truth. This is not the wisdom, the understanding that comes down from heaven above, but is earthly, unspiritual, demonic. For where jealousy and selfish ambition, now notice it links those two together twice. For where jealousy and selfish ambition exists, there will be disorder and every vile practice. So, you know somebody, and they are participating in vile practices. They're just messed up. There's disunity and chaos in their life. You can absolutely be guaranteed that they are living a life that is all about them. That's what selfish ambition is. Selfish ambition is a disproportionate view and value of you above all else. Very, very dangerous. And it leads to jealousy. Now, I want to further dissect the elements of ambition, or selfish ambition specifically. So there's 3 elements of selfish ambition that I think we need to be aware of according to this verse. And we're going to bring it out. Number 1 is jealousy. Now, when I say jealousy, I really want to functionally kind of define that. It's the idea of you or me comparing everything we have or everything we don't have to everyone else. A normal term would be pile counting. In other words, somebody else gets something. The Bible says, rejoice with those who are rejoicing. That's not what jealousy says. Jealousy says, don't rejoice with those who just got a blessing or a rejoicing. You be envious of what they have and resentful because they got it and you didn't, which all begins to provoke or invoke questions on the inside of us going, well, God, becomes an accusation against God, because here's how it works. God, why did you bless them and you didn't bless me? So the jealousy, all of a sudden, coming out of the heart, turns and makes an accusation against Almighty God. That is one aspect, one element of selfish ambition. Again, concerned with what others have or what we might be missing out on. Second aspect or second element of that is pride. Pride is motivated, don't you think about this? Pride is always motivated by perception. Somebody who is prideful in nature is always concerned about what somebody else is thinking about them. So a person who is filled with pride becomes a slave to the perception of those around them. What do I mean by that? Let's use our common culture just as an example. Pride says, I can't wear shoes that aren't name brand or jeans that aren't name brand, and I'm going to spend ridiculous amounts of money on what I think somebody will think of me if I don't wear name brand shoes. Those are values that are of this world. Those are things that are related to pride. How do I know? Because it's based on perception. Think about it. Think about the people you know whose lives are consumed and driven by the perception that they give to other people. I see people who they'll act a certain way, they'll buy certain things, they'll participate in certain activities. All of it, again, comes from the desire to cause somebody to feel a certain way or to perceive them in a certain manner. Now, the problem is, pride is always about self-promotion. Now, you think about it. Why do you want to do that? Because you want them to think more highly of you very often than you do of yourself. Honestly, if we have a good self-esteem, if our identity is in Christ, we're not as concerned about what you think about me as to what I can do to help you. I'm thinking more about you. What happens is you get into a culture and everybody is operating in this world system according to pride, concerned about what everybody else is thinking. When their focus is so solely on them, you're not paying attention to what the other person is wearing anyway. If you do it in a sense that's critical. So I'm going to put them down. Why do you put people down? Pride puts people down, not because it necessarily likes them, but that's the worldly way of trying to increase their self-value. We find our value in God. We find our value in the fact that He made us in His image. That's where we find our value. That's not something that is subjective to my income, my economic status, my social status, my job status. My identity and my security is simply in the idea that I am created in the image, imago Dei, of Almighty God, and nothing on this earth can take that away. Now, if you remove those elements and you take that out of a society and you remove the God element, then there's nothing left to govern that society except for elements of selfish ambition or pride, self-exaltation, and self-promotion. Third element of selfish ambition is false reasoning. And it said it a little differently there. It said is a wisdom, but is not the wisdom that comes from above. It is the wisdom that is earthly in nature. Again, it's a different system of assessing value. So one element of selfish ambition is false reasoning. What does that look like? It looks like it is earthly or demonic or lower than godly wisdom or spiritual reasoning. So spiritual reasoning, for example, says, I find fulfillment and purpose in helping someone else become everything they're called to be. Demonic or earthly wisdom says, I'm going to make it all about me instead of doing anything for anybody else, and you find yourself in a void of fulfillment. And you don't really understand why is it. I call it a black hole. The more you focus on you, the more you try to make you happy, the more you try to please yourself, the less pleased and the more discontent you become and the more desperate you come in your attempts to make yourself happy. It's a terrible cycle, but I see it all the time. I see people fall for this. Second obstacle of the life beyond me is the idea of self-preservation. What does that look like? Self-preservation, most people, let's just be honest, most of us are resistant to change. Anybody in here just absolutely love change? No. I call it self-preservation, and I allude to the idea of being resistant to change because when you're uncomfortable and somebody else is uncomfortable, isn't it easier for you to say, you need to change? It's easier for you to tell somebody that they need to change which leads to your ability to change the circumstances, the situation, but not have to change. That's a form of self-preservation. Does that make sense? So what we do is we try to impose the change that we don't want to incur on those around us so that we can preserve something very, very specific for ourselves. And that'll be the last point that I make. So when you think about self-preservation, it's the idea of retaining a particular security because of a reluctance to enter into change. We want to keep things status quo in our life to preserve our comfort. So number three, The next obstacle for this is kind of big. The third obstacle for life beyond me is control. Now, when I say control, I don't mean necessarily just control of me, which I do, but I mean control of the things in my life that affect me, but also the element of wanting and desiring to control you and those things that you do that affect me. Control of us and control of others. And let me just preface this. It is the illusion of control, because everybody here, I believe, understands innately that we really don't have a whole lot of control. And realizing that can even cause you to grasp for more and more control. Problem is, or the reality is, Christ calls us to abandonment, not to control. Not abandonment of responsibility or accountability, but abandonment of the values and the influences of the things in our lives other than God. That's what self-diminishing, that's what dying to ourselves really means. It means walking away from the values that are contrary to what God says the values should be in our lives. He tells us, give up control. Side with me on the issues that are of relevance. Side with me on the issues that are important, and then all of a sudden you begin to experience something. You begin to experience freedom. Why? Because when you side with God, you're siding against perception and with reality. Jesus said, I am the way, I am the reality, and I am the life. When you walk with Christ, you're walking in reality. Y'all have heard the term woke. Christians are woke. What does that mean? It means that we are absolutely aware of the fallen nature that all of mankind is slanted towards. In other words, we're not under some delusion that man is born good. We understand absolutely, according to the Word of God, that man is born broken. That particular worldview helps us automatically begin to justify things in the world. Why does bad stuff happen to good people? I'll tell you why. Because people, like creation, is broken, and we know exactly why. Nothing else offers that particular worldview, that understanding of the world, which makes all of a sudden it makes sense. So that's why I don't have to teach my kid to lie. That's why I'm selfish by nature, and my first impulse is self-preservation. That's why I would rather change you than me have to change, even if the change was for my good. I would rather you change to your hurt than me change to my good. That is broken. Well, the Bible calls it wicked. The word wicked comes from a word that literally means wicker, which means to twist. See, it wasn't necessarily that. Truth is this. Truth is something, or wickedness is a truth or a reality that has been twisted. So it's not that the elements aren't there. It's like this world and a lot of people's worldview. The world is here and it's real, but it is a twisted version of what God intended. And in our minds, we're trying to make something straight. So we're either going to try to correct it, or we're going to come up with questions. So we need that worldview to really kind of anchor us, because we really want to feel as if we're in control of things. And a lot of times we don't really understand that we're not. Again, it's a delusion. Now, faith in God's sovereignty and good intentions is the only antidote for trying to absolutely control everything in your life. I tell people all the time, look, you want to worry, you worry about what you can control. You do realize there's very little that you can control. Very, very little. But what is the antidote for that desire in me to try to control everything? You want to control your job. You want to control your children. You want to control your wife. You want to control your circumstances. You want to control the weather. We'll do rain dances outside to make it rain. But why? What is compelling me? It is that nature that control is going to provide. And we'll get to that in just a minute, that it is going to provide something. The only antidote to that is to really, really believe that there is a sovereign God, and that's part of it, but a God who has good intentions towards us. That's why you must believe and understand that God is what? God is love. When you think about what love is patient, love is kind, love is everything that selfishness is not. To know that that sovereign being is the one who's looking over my life, even though we're in a broken world. Do you understand that God has made provision for all of the effects of this broken world in your life? Every effect that has occurred because of the brokenness of this world, the provision for that brokenness has already been made. It's been made in the person of Jesus Christ, right down to the brokenness that we referred to as death, which is the ultimate culmination of the brokenness of this world. You understand? That's why you die. You die because the very sin that's in your nature, that's in your body, the very selfish impulses are the evidence of the sin, which results in the penalty, which is why everybody in this room will die eventually. Scientists can't tell you why your cells just stop reproducing and doing what they're supposed to do. It's almost like something just happens and something triggers it, and suddenly everything just stops working. It starts reverting. Why? Time. What is time? Time is the observable effects of death in mankind. There is a type of control that is valuable and necessary in the life of the believer. It's the type of control that does not come naturally to any of us, but is absolutely crucial to all of us. Everybody knows what it is, right? Self-control, yeah. Now, when I say that, think about it. It does not come natural. So what am I supposed to do? Does the Bible tell us that we should have self-control? The Bible tells us any man or woman who does not have self-control is like a city without defenses. It means that everything that comes against your life will succeed to a degree because you have no ability to stave off or defend yourself because of a lack of self-control. Self-control can be that thing that causes you to do things or that inspires you not to do things. The Bible refers to it as a powerful fortress against the things in your life that would love to destroy you and bring damage. Self-control, but we want to control everything but ourselves. Now, where do we get that from? The Bible tells us very clearly that self-control is not something innate to humanity. It is something, it is an outside alien force that comes into us via the Spirit of God. It is the evidence or the fruit of the very presence of God in our lives that manifests in the form of us not being subject to all of our appetites, every temptation and every assault. It literally becomes the power of God that works in us as a fortress against those things that would be an assault on our lives. We all need it. Again, lack of self-control is one of the greatest obstacles to a life beyond you. As you begin to embrace self-control, let go of trying to control everything that doesn't have to do with you. And you hear me say it this way, your response is your responsibility. No matter what. And we always say, well, they made me mad. How many times have you heard somebody say, you made me mad? You made me mad. Nobody can make you mad. They can inspire you, and you can choose to respond in an angry manner or a mad way, but that is your response, is your responsibility. What gives you that power? Self-control. Otherwise, guess what? You're at the mercy of everybody who makes you mad because you can't stop from responding in anger. It becomes very, very powerful. It says a man or a woman who has self-control, who has patience, is more powerful than a warrior. That's just pretty profound. So what is it that often triggers the desire to control? Now, this is the fourth obstacle to beyond me. It's fear. Now, fear is an absolute huge obstacle because, again, it often triggers so many things. When you get scared, the first thing that you want to do is you want to reach out and you want to try to control that situation. I see it all the time. Somebody gets scared. You ever seen a mother? The child runs out and begins to do something, that mother will just grab that child and just hold that child and squeeze it close, it's just a natural impulse. Whenever we experience fear, we grasp and reach for greater control. So if you see somebody who's reaching to control you or reaching to control somebody else, realize that there's an element of fear at operation. Realize it in yourself. When you absolutely feel compelled to control what somebody else is thinking or feeling, it's fearful. My wife sometimes, I'll see my wife, she'll get upset. And a lot of you husbands, you realize this. Maybe your wife is upset and she's crying over something. And you're fearful for her. So you're like, you're going to be okay. You've got to get over this. And you try to help her get beyond that whatever that is as quickly as they can, because you're fearful that her staying in this emotional state, which they're equipped for and we're not, will somehow cause damage. So we try to control and say, you know what, you need to get over that. Get over that really, really quick. And then we exacerbate the situation. We start reaching for control at a time in her life where she probably feels somewhat out of control in the first place, which may be the thing that had evoked, that emotional response. So control, huge. Fear will trigger control. Fear will also trigger anger and aggression. You know that, right? So when somebody gets scared, and I've told this story before, maybe if you've heard it, tune me out for just a minute and get a cup of coffee, but we had a dog, sweet dog. Her name was Fuzzy. Fuzzy had like 16 puppies at one time. I didn't even know that was possible. 16 animals come out of one animal. I mean, I was like, that only happens with frogs. Anyway, Fuzzy was a sweet dog. Well, Fuzzy disappeared. And one of my brothers went looking for Fuzzy. I think the name of the dog may be right. Anyway, found Fuzzy, and Fuzzy had been caught in a steel trap. Fuzzy had been there for a couple of days, and Fuzzy was really, really scared. Fuzzy was nervous. Fuzzy didn't know what was going on. And one of my brothers reached out to let Fuzzy, if y'all don't know what a steel trap is, steel traps are things that trappers set to catch coyotes and other vermin. Needless to say, the dog had been caught, been there for a few days, was scared out of its gourd, didn't know what was going on, was severely hurt and in pain. He reaches down to unhook the thing, and what do you think Sweet Fuzzy did? Oh, yeah. So he's standing there with a hole in his hand. There's a scared dog. It's fear aggression. I had another animal, and I say animal because even our impulses outside of God are animalistic in nature. Very often we will revert back to animalistic tendencies if we're not very, very careful. It is natural. I'm not saying it's right. I tell people all the time, listen, that being angry and aggressive as a result of fear is completely natural, but we as believers are not relegated to the meager dictates of the natural. That's why we're called to live a supernatural life. So when we experience fear, that's why God is so against it. I'll just tell you, when I experience fear, no matter what the form of fear it is, I go the other way. I will not make a decision before I will make a fearful decision. We are called to operate in everything we do in faith. I don't not make decisions because of fear. Now, please don't misunderstand. I'm not talking about wisdom. I'm not talking about looking at something and seeing that that's going to go wrong, recognizing that that's not good, being fearful of that ending, and adverse as opposed to that ending and choosing to do something else. That's not what I'm talking about. But when I feel fear coming inside of me and causing me to draw back, I'm like, whoa, stop. There's something here. And I begin to really kind of sniff that thing. I do not, being a believer, being born of the Spirit of God, I do not like fear or even the scent of it, the smell of it, to dictate anything that I do. There are times when, even when I'm dealing with a person and it's a tough situation, and you ever had to have a tough conversation? You've had to really bring truth into somebody's life, and then you start getting kind of timid over the idea. You need to be careful. You need to recognize what's going on. There can be a spirit of intimidation, this spirit of fear that can overtake you and cause you to draw back and stop from saying the very thing that person needs. It is truth, it is reality spoken into the soul of a human being that allows freedom to come. When you allow even the fear of somebody's response to stop you from saying something that's true, and they will, I'll just tell you, you go against popular opinion and you speak truth, there's a certain amount of fear that will come in and try to shut your mouth. Anytime I experience that, I just kind of spiritually perk up and go, you know what? Let me think this thing through. I'm intentional about drawing back, but fear will trigger anger and aggression very often. So when you see somebody who disproportionately responds in anger towards something you do or something you don't do, understand that there is an element of fear. It may be a fear of losing control. It may be a fear that they're going to be abused again or hurt again or manipulated again. Nobody likes being manipulated. But the fear of manipulation can cause you to turn into a manipulator. And you understand that that's what anger and aggression is. Anger and aggression is a form of manipulation. If you don't want somebody to ask you something, what do? You blow up on them every time they ask you something. Your boss comes in and goes, hey, and you're like, what you want? You want something? They're like, no. I mean, you've seen, people like that. So anyway, one of the triggers or things that fear will trigger is control. It will trigger anger and aggression. And here's another one, and this is a big one. Fear will trigger withdrawal. Now, for those that fear doesn't trigger anger and aggression, very often it will trigger this other one. They will withdraw. People get scared, and they'll become timid. Timidity. He's not given us a spirit of fear or timidity. That means that urge to draw back. So when fear comes, and fear will keep you from getting over you and getting into and allowing God to get on in your life, but that fear of withdrawal. So instead of when that truth comes, that opportunity comes, that fear comes, whatever it looks like, people will withdraw, and very often they will isolate themselves. Now, people who have this tendency, the tendency to withdraw as a result of being triggered by fear, very often will struggle with depression. They will struggle with depression. They will struggle with very, very poor self-image. They will blame themselves for everything that goes wrong with other people and people around them. Even when it is clear, you're standing on the outside and you're looking at somebody and you're going, why are you taking the blame? This is the chucklehead. It can be very, very obvious, but to that person who fear is triggering withdrawal, they figure if I take the blame, then I don't have to deal with that person who's wrong. You see my point? But if I soberly assign what's wrong, I may have to deal with that. Fear has triggered the withdrawal, so I'm going to be non-confrontational. People will call it spiritual. They're calling it a lot of things. The Bible sometimes calls it cowardice. I'm not trying to be ugly. I'm just telling you because it's tough and it takes bravery to deal with those things in you, because you can withdraw from you just as easy as you can withdraw from somebody else. God reveals. How many times has God revealed something in your life that you needed to deal with? And you thought to yourself, we'll deal with that later. I've done it. I mean, God has whammied me 3 or 4 times. And I can distinctively remember times in my life where I could feel in my spirit that this was big and this needed to be dealt with. And I just felt like, God, I don't have the energy. I don't have the energy. I just do not have the energy, and I would shrink back and go, God, is this something that maybe we can deal with later? Even though in my spirit I understood the gravity. Let me tell you what you forsake. You forsake the more when you withdraw from the leading of God to deal with something in your life. You've got to compromise. You've got to sin, and the Holy Spirit begins to speak with you, and you choose to not mess with that. You do something called searing. You sear your conscience. It means the next time that God mentions that to you, it's not as strong. Now, it was just as strong, but the problem is you've taken a step away, and He's speaking with the same volume, but you're not hearing with the same intensity because you've allowed the compromise. You knew it was wrong, but you chose to withdraw. Fear. Why? Because it meant that you would have to give up something. Self-preservation. You see how it all ties together. It all works together and manifests in this beautiful thing we call life. Isn't it wonderful? Number 4, and I was really going over this as I was studying, and I thought this to be fascinating. Fear will trigger physical damage in your life. Do you realize? Here, let me tell you something this is a trip. Fear will cause an upsurge in adrenaline and cortisone in your body, elevating the hormones and working with other hormones. Fear will make you more susceptible to viruses. So some of you guys are worried about the coronavirus. I'm not going to minimize it. Nasty little bug, obviously. But do you understand that being fearful of that thing elevates your being susceptible to that thing? Isn't that almost demonic in nature? Think about that. Job said it this way, the very thing I feared has come upon me. The idea, do you realize that staying in a state of habitual fear literally damages the organ we call the heart? Literally, prolonged times of anxiety with these hormones released in our body cause us to literally damage our hearts. Makes us more susceptible to disease, unable to fight infections, viruses, and illnesses. And I was like, wow, That's why God is so emphatic when he said, God has not given us a spirit of fear, but of love, joy, and a sound mind. Sound mind means that we're reasonable. Fear will steal your reason. Fear will take reason, ball it up, and throw it in the trash can if you allow it. You've seen it. Fear is not rational. Fear takes away your ability to reason and will cripple you mentally, physically, spiritually, emotionally. Look at that. Control, anger, withdrawal. All these are destructive results of fear, either in your life or in the life of those around you. All right. Last one. Fifth obstacle to a life beyond you. God has more for you. He has plans that are beyond what we can think and imagine and hope for and believe on this side of eternity and eternity to come. But fifth obstacle, and this is a subtle yet very dangerous one, because this one creates something that we've dealt with in an earlier series called indifference. Very, very dangerous. I asked a question again on Sunday. I said, do you believe that there is more to God, more to your relationship than you are currently experiencing? Let's just be honest. We have a tendency to get comfortable even in the most dysfunctional and dissatisfying circumstances. Think about it. As humans, God has done something incredible in us. We are so adaptable that we can absolutely embrace and find comfort in the middle of total dysfunction. I've seen it. In fact, we can become so comfortable in dysfunction that we have an aversion to function and normal. And here's the scary part. You have no idea. You don't know, you don't recognize until somebody comes along, that third person, the Holy Spirit, the Word of God comes along and says, you know what? The life that you're experiencing, the life that you're living right now is a dysfunctional life that will result in pain for you and pain for those around you. But you're so used to the pain. It's something that's so natural. The manipulation, the hurt, the fear, all that stuff is so normal that you take it away and all of a sudden you feel funny. I have seen so many times people who God rescued from dysfunctional situations turn right around and run headlong back into what? Dysfunctional situations. Comfort. It's crazy. Crazy. Comfort often leads to, again, complacency. And let's be honest, does anybody in here naturally have a disdain for comfort? We like comfort. Comfort, again, is the whole reason that we would rather other people change than ourselves. We want to preserve our comfort. Yet your very comfort, the very thing that every one of us innately desire to keep and to hold on to, becomes one of the very most dangerous obstacles, most subtle obstacles to a life that is beyond me. Me keeping my comfort costs me the ability to bring value into your life. Because to do so, to give unto others often in one way, shape, or form will cost you something. That's why Christ came. Gave us the ultimate example of the greatest gift, but it was a result of the greatest sacrifice. So the most valuable thing we got cost him everything. He sets the model, he sets the precedent, and he calls us into that life. And he says that you may bring exponential value into others' lives, you must let your life go. Beautiful, powerful, but it's not earthly wisdom. It makes no sense. What kind of joy, what kind of life, what kind of purpose could I find in sacrificing the things that are best for me for the good of others? If you don't know, I can't explain it, but it is what makes the Christian life worth living. You've heard it said, it's better to give than to receive. Why? I don't know. Because I'm broken, living in a broken world, and I experience these spiritual principles, and I know the reality. It's something feels complete inside of me when I sacrificially give to somebody else. The evidence that I'm living in a broken world, but there's a world somewhere, a spirit somewhere, a creator somewhere who has things in order and right, and when I do it his way, something happens on the inside of me. Comfort leads to complacency. We love comfort. Selfish to sacrificial means giving up our comfort and exchanging it for conformity. You will never be conformed to the image of Christ while retaining your comfort. You know that's true. I didn't say it was easy. I didn't say it was nice. It's not difficult. It's simple. Excuse me, I didn't say it is difficult. It means you'll die, but it's not complicated. Few people find it and experience it because very often we're just not willing to ask God to give us the grace to move into that life that is beyond us, so that we can experience what we said at the very beginning, which was this: your life was meant for more than you. That's that more that God has for every one of us. Let's pray and we'll get out of here. Father, even though we don't always eat fully of the feast that you have provided for our souls in the person of Jesus Christ, even though we don't choose to drink constantly and fully from the life-giving waters of your Spirit, you call us yours and you love us. Father, for those who would, you said those who hunger and thirst, those who choose discomfort for righteousness' sake, would find true comfort. God, I ask you, all those who will, for all those who will, give us the grace to really embrace the discomfort and, like never before in our lives, experience the conformity into the image of Jesus Christ. Father, I thank you that you have made this possible by your Spirit. God, free us from fear. Free us from all the obstacles in ourselves that would cause us to stumble over and over. God, we need your grace, your ability, your power on us to do what we can't do. Father, we cry out to you as your children. We say, save us, change us, heal us, transform us into the image of your Jesus Christ. We believe that our lives were created for more than us. Draw us to you, Father, like never before. Soberly, intentionally, consistently. In Jesus' name, amen.